Hey viewers, welcome to a review of last week's battle between the Orks and our Space Marines that have come down from our Custodes base in search of one of their key characters. Anyway, at this stage of the setup I have completed the introduction narrative and both armies are on the board. So we've got the Orks on this side of the board here, and we've got our Space Marines on the other side over the back there. So look, I haven't done the editing for the actual battle at this stage, so what we have in here in this truck here is we've got our Space Marine captain there and also Blatz. I don't know if anyone remembers Blatz from a few seasons ago, and he's got his little house there and his little cannon down here. So he's hiding in there, and I'm hoping to create some orc hijinks out of that, so we'll see how that rolls. So they've tried to harvest this train for parts, as orcs do, and they've basically uncovered our Space Marine captain there, and then his gang, his crew, the rest of the chapter, has basically turned up trying to rescue him. So that's the narrative, that's what we have at this stage. We've also got these goblins around the place, like here, for instance, and over here. As I said before, I'm sort of building in Age of Sigmar and fantasy battle elements into this because that is part of the campaign. Hopefully it'll all become clear if you subscribe and watch it from week to week. So there we have it. That's the board on the, I should say, at the start of the first turn. So we'll wait and see what happens at the first turn coming up shortly. Here we are at the end of turn 1 for the Orks, and a lot of warring going on. A lot of noise, no action. No casualties at all for the Space Marines in this turn. They've basically just moseyed on across the board. We've led the way with the bus out the front, which is loaded up with some goodies, which we'll see later, operating as some mobile cover there for the various cans and orcs, etc., to come up through the rear. So that's what that's doing. Over this side we've got a similar thing going on with this beast leading the way right out in the middle, offering a huge target for the Space Marines there to take it out, but behind it sits a lot of goodies for the Orks. We've had Snickrot, who was in that little trench there, come out and sit behind that tower ready to jump out and smash somebody as they come past. So all positioning for the Orks, no casualties. We'll wait and see what comes up next. Here we are at the end of the first half of turn 2, and the Orks have made quite a few inroads into the lines of the Space Marines. Let's start over this side of the board. We had the goblins, just basically, they couldn't do much, so they just basically marched across the board, standing just there, hoping to get... I don't really know what they're going to do. They're like Gretchen, they're just going to be soaking up fire somewhere along the line. Had these knobs in mega armour come along, fire upon the Rhino. Rhino also took some fire from back here, and here, and the Morkanaut basically took it out in the end, spilling all the Space Marines out onto the board. Over here, the Dreadnought was taken out by the charging Squiggoth, which is on its last legs. We had that group of, that Snickrot's group, basically the front of the Land Raiders just opened just enough for a couple of grenades to be thrown in there. So didn't take it out, but no doubt it would be lots of flashes and bangs which make all the Orks excited and stuff. So that was pretty good. Over this side we had this other group of goblins just come through this piece of cover here. This mob here just came around the side, couldn't really do much. Those Gretchen still not doing much. Over here we managed to have the cans get into close combat with this rhino and made short work of that, popping out the contents just there. And then we have the bus. So we had Blatz in the back with the captain for the Space Marines, threw the captain out in the turf, assembled his little outhouse contraption, and then activated it, spilling out all the squigs, including the colossal squig, out there right in the middle of the battle. So they're just going to cause mayhem, and Blatz is now hiding in there, giggling away, reading the newspaper, while he's going to drive this bus around the board and have heaps of fun. So that's the plan. That's what we have. That's the end of the first half of turn 2. We've got the Space Marines coming up next. Welcome to the second half of turn 2. Blood, guts and mayhem. There's been plenty of casualties on the Ork side. It's the Space Marines' turn at this stage. And, well, pretty much everything's out on the board. We've got 2 remaining units of Marines. One there and one over here. Those guys there are sitting in the Land Raider up the back there, and also the Rhino over the other side there. But look, at this stage we've had some deep striking units touch down. Terminators touch down over here and here. After touching them down, they really kind of in a pretty poor position to influence things really. We've got Thunder Shields and the Hammers and Shields, can't remember the exact names anyway, but really they couldn't really influence anything there, and they're too far away from things like the Morkanaut there to do anything, so pretty poor positioning, but still only turn 2, so it shouldn't be too bad. Anyway, what we had here is this unit of Marines just pull back, consolidate and fire into the Mega Knobs there, taking out 2 at the front. The combined fire of this unit, that one, and the Land Raider pulling back there took out the Squiggoth, and I managed to break it as well at the same time, so it's sitting there completely broken in more ways than one, so that is pretty depressing. But anyway, we'll get repaired. Over this side of the board we had this unit of Marines and those guys just pulling back, and the Dreadnought coming into position here, fired upon the cans over here, taking out a couple, and then the Rhino turned the corner and crashed into another one, taking it out, but looking fairly exposed to 6 cans, ready to take them out. We had another unit of Terminators touching down here, firing into these goblins, taking out 3 at the back, and we had our jump pack unit here touch down, and there was a HQ leader there who, for the Orks, which was basically scared off. There was really a narrative part of the story, and he's just run off. So they've touched down there, and no doubt they'll try and influence the battle somewhere along the line. Another jump back character here assault these grots here. I mean, the grots are softened up by some Dreadnought fire at the back there, taking them out, and then he charged in, taking a whole stack. So there's an Ork in amongst that, so we'll wait and see how that pans out. Had the Predator up the back, just vaporise a whole heap of these squigs, but the colossal squig is intact, ready to cause some damage. That's about all we have for this turn. So we've taken quite a few casualties for the Orks on the Ork side, but they've still got quite a few left on the board. So we'll wait and see what happens. Turn 3 coming up shortly. Here we are at the end of the first half of turn 3, and the Orks have hit the Space Marine lines and taken out quite a few casualties. We had this zap gun here turn around and fire at the Terminators, not taking out any casualties. We had Goblins and the Mega Knobs charge into the line of Space Marines. 2 Space Marines got taken out and a whole bunch of Goblins, so that will just continue to go. We had the Morkanaut charge into this defended position here, taking out 2 casualties just there. and that battle is ongoing. These orcs here, Snickrot, basically were there. They just spun around here and assaulted this group here. That's fairly evenly weighted. This group of orcs busted open this tank here, spilling out the contents out the back. That jetpack character there just continued to fight the grots and finally got taken out. So that was a bit of a bold move there, which didn't pay off. We had some heavy weapons fire from here, taking out one Space Marine here with a jump pack. Blatt sitting in that tank there, took out one there. And then we had the orcs spin round, both these groups, the goblins there and the orcs there, turn around and open fire on the marines, the terminators here, taking out one. Which is pretty good really, considering there's all those orcs. You know, one marine's pretty good, I think. Anyway, killer cans came charging in, busted open the rhinos, spilling them out the back. We had these boys basically, trying to get focus there, sorry, sit on top of this tower here, and they could fire down on the Predator tank there, which is sitting there firing away. Colossal Squig and Little Squigs came charging into the Dreadnought. There's a hand-to-hand combat going on there, and those guys are duking it out. So wait and see how that goes. That looks about it on the board. So quite a few casualties on the Space Marine side, but could go anyway. It's only turn 3, so second half of turn 3 coming up shortly. Here we are at the end of the turn 3 for the Space Marines, and they've taken out quite a few of the orcs. It's looking pretty dire for them. Over this side of the board we had the units of Space Marines. These guys were in the Rhino before. They've popped out and they just basically withdrew, along with, we've got a Devastator type outfit just there, and we've got the rest of the Space Marines fired upon the killer cans, and there's only 2 remaining, so that was pretty lucky they survived anyway, with all those las weaponry, las cannon weaponry and heavy weapon type weapons. Anyway, so that unit is basically decimated, only 2 remaining. Over here, a Dreadnought was left alone in combat with the Colossal Squig, and even though a couple of little squigs went down, Colossal Squig came out victorious, so that's a win for the orcs. We had the Predator just advance, fire into the mob of orcs just there. Over this side we had the Terminators advance on the goblins and completely decimated those guys. Over this side we've got the Dreadnought there, vaporised the remaining Jawa grots, but 1 orc remained there, so he's probably got to run for the hills, I'd guess, faced with all that heavy weaponry. Over this side we had Terminators advancing on the orc heavy weaponry and taking that out. Our assault Marines assaulted this position and took out the orc that was there. This is a ongoing combat with the goblins and meganobs, etc, etc. There's a couple of casualties for the Marines and a whole heap of grots going down. Basically the goblins are grots, if you haven't worked that out. Anyway, okay, so we had in this area here with the Morkanaut, we had our HQ unit there for the Marines basically withdraw from combat, allowing our Terminators fitted out with assault weaponry to come in, and couldn't take it out. So that's going to be ongoing as far as that goes. Moving over here, we had a combat there just with Snickrot and various Marines of different types, and a few casualties on each side. Look, I paused there for a moment. The reason I'm pausing is that this combat was actually not resolved. I'll just work that out now. So sometimes that happens from time to time. I just skip a battle, so that didn't actually happen that turn, so that'll just have to spill into next turn. That's how I run it. If you just miss it out, you just keep going. Anyway, over this side, these Marines here just withdrew, and they've got a lot of melter weaponry they did, and they took out those orcs. So there's a boss in there and a pain boy, a few different things. So there's only the solitary orc remaining mounted on the Tyrannid there, so we'll see how that resolves. So I made a big blue in that section. Didn't resolve this combat, so I don't know how that's really going to affect the battle. Those guys will probably duke it out next turn and resolve it then, but that happens. Alright, that's the end of turn 3. We've got turn 4 coming up shortly. Hey viewers, here we go at the end of the first half of turn 4, and the orcs have struck back fairly solidly. And let's just start over this side of the board. We had the 2 remaining killer cans basically charge into these Marines here, and with their bolters and ranged weaponry they really couldn't do much on the way of fighting back, so they lost 4 on that assault. But those cans are pretty exposed to another close by unit. We had these boys in this position up here fire down on the Devastator unit down there, taking out quite a few, and they got charged by the squigs, 3 remaining squigs. 2 of those squigs died. There's only 1 Marine left there, and Marine versus squig, that squig's gone. Anyway, wait and see. Over this side we had a mob of boys charge into the Terminators. 2 Terminators went down and a whole stack of boys. That is fairly evenly weighted. 2 remaining Terminators left. Can they hold out? Wait and see. Colossal Squig charged the Predator tank and exploded it. That thing's just rampaging around the place, destroying stuff. Then we had there's an Orc character there who jumped on the back of Blatz's Blatterwagon, I'll call it, and it wheeled around, took out the Dreadnought there. So this thing as well is rampaging across the board. Over this side, nothing here. This is heavily controlled Space Marine territory, so no orcs there. We had this ongoing combat. We lost a whole stack of goblins / Gretchen. Also lost 3 Marines, so that is fairly evenly weighted at this stage, especially with those orcs with their power claws. They just mince up those Marines, so that's pretty good. Finally resolved this combat, or at least partially resolved it. We had 3 Terminators go down, had a nasty big claw just smashing these guys. That is ongoing. This thing's heavily wounded as well, so I don't know how that's going to resolve. We had Snickrot basically sneak away from the combat over here just to get away. He's by himself, and there's, you know, pretty heavy weaponry there. There's Thunderhammer there, and, you know, some Tech Marine servo arms and things like that. Another hammer there, so he chose to run, as you would. Over here we've got our mounted Orc champion charging into the unit of Marines, taking out 3, so that will be ongoing. And we've still got this fleeing unit over here for the Marines there. We'll no doubt turn around, stabilise and try and fight back. Okay, so that's the end of the first half of turn 4. Can't pick a winner yet, so we'll have to see what happens next. Second half coming up shortly. Here we are at the end of the second half of the turn 4. Space Marines turn, and they really didn't do so good this turn. Probably the highlight is that captain there just took out the squig. Sole remaining squig. Anyway, seriously. We had the killer cans here. This extra group of Marines here charged in, reinforced that, hoping they would take out those cans, but 1 survived, and a whole heap of Marines went down. So even though the Marines are going to take out that melee eventually, The Orks are holding up pretty well. Over this side, Terminator's going toe to toe with those boys. We had 2 Orks go down and 1 Terminator, so not so good again for the Space Marines. Ooh. Looking back over here, we've got this mounted Ork going toe to toe with a whole heap of Marines there and actually holding up. So there's 2 casualties for the Space Marines, and that Ork, while wounded, is still engaged. Over here, the Assault Marines, surprise surprise, came in and took out the fleeing Snickrot. So that was probably an easy kill over there. This was one of the worst combats ever. Those Space Marines thought they'd just stay in there and do alright, but they ended up taking out the Goblin and ended up getting themselves killed. That was horrible. Our heroes over here just kept fleeing, almost went off the table. So that was horrible. The Morkanaut here, still in combat. These guys came around the side and this thing's on its last legs, but it managed to take out 3 Terminators with that big ugly claw there. Smack. No good. Terrible turn for the Space Marines. It's all falling apart, but can they pull it back together? We've got 2 turns to go. Turn 5 coming up shortly. Here we are where the Orks have had their first half of turn 5, and there's been a few big events. We'll start on this side of the board. One, the can here was going into combat with all that. Managed to take out a couple at the front and then finally fell over, so Marines got the upper hand there. The Squig, the Colossal Squig, turned around and charged the solitary Marine just standing there. It was just too much of a juicy target there for it, and that was taken out. Our group of ranged boys who are standing up in here really had nowhere to fire on. There was nothing in range, so they just basically came down here and took a position behind this tower. The combat with the last Terminator, the Terminator couldn't really hold up against the power claws. There's a couple of power claws in there, so got taken out. Orks taking that section there. The Blatterbus here wheeled around, fired into the Assault Marines, taking out 2. Over this side we had our Mega Knobs charge in to this combat with the Morkanaut, and the Morkanaut finally, heavily wounded, got taken out, and there's a solitary Marine there surviving, so that was pretty good for them, taking out the Morkanaut. Over here, finally the mounted Ork got taken out, and that unit there is free to engage someone else. So there we have it. That's the first half of turn 5. We'll see what happens next. Here we are at the end of turn 5, and the Space Marines have finally knocked over the Blatterbus. We'll have a look at that in a minute. Over this side of the board we've got our Terminators with hammers. Basically came across here and they were joined by this champion just there. He was over this side, didn't want to assault that directly by himself, so just tucked behind these guys, and no doubt that will pan out in the next turn. Over here our Librarian turned around and fortified their position and shot in at the Ork Knobs there, and didn't take any out. We'll go around the other side first before we get to the bus. We had over here massed bolter fire, las cannons, and there's some melter weaponry in there as well, taking out the Colossal Squig. So there you go, that's all that. That's all Ork stuff. Oh yeah, we also had this unit of Marines here basically come out from behind this tower and took out one Ork who was sticking its nose around the corner. So the bus, what are we going to do here? We had the assault squad charge the bus, tip it over, blow it up, and we had the Ork just basically jump off and sitting on the side there. And then I'm trying to do some narrative section here with the with Blatts who's this guy, just here. He's inside here, and he's been the one firing out various projectiles across the course of the battle, and that basically spilled into this trench, and there's a poor Space Marine who's going to be a victim of the contents there. So we'll see how that pans out when I edit it, but that's the general idea. So that's what we have. That's turn 5. We'll see what happens. We've got one more turn to go. Okay, here we are at the end of turn 6 for the Orks, and we started off over here in the middle with the Blatterbus on its side after being assaulted, and as I said before, the Blatz's little outhouse was sitting on the edge of that trench there, leaking some I don't know what into the trench. Then Blatz came out of the outhouse, ran away like this, and these poor assault marines that were standing next to the outhouse as it exploded had a very unpleasant death. Anyway, that was that part. Over this side we had these two units of Orks combine and try and fire into these marines here, and they did take out 3 in the end, so they did a pretty good job there for Orks. We had this other Orkish character here, survivor from the Blatterbus explosion, come out here and fire into the group of Terminators just there, and not taking anything out. Our 2 resilient Mega Knobs over here should have died a long time ago, but assaulted this group over here, taking out 2 Marines, and they're still going, but they're about to get assaulted by the Thunderhammer Marines, Terminators, so they're going to be in some strife, I would say. So there we have it. Looks like the Marines have got the upper edge, but we'll wait and see what they can do in their final turn. Second half of turn 6 coming up shortly. Well, there we have it. That's the end of the battle. The Space Marines have had their final turn. Over this side of the board we saw our final unit consolidate and take out a couple of Orks here. Likewise, there's a couple of remaining Marines here. They took out 1 from this side, leaving just a handful left. In the middle, we've got 1 resilient Ork just sitting there. He's about to say, what am I doing here, and probably make his escape out here. At this stage I haven't really done the narrative section of the final part of the battle, but I'll make a story up there. And over this side we've got the Mega Knobs, which really didn't stand a chance being assaulted by all that. So they got taken out. So overall we've got a Space Marine victory. I will now tidy this up and move back into Myth Dravor. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.